Just moments ago, something unfolded that no one in Britain ever imagined. Prime Minister Keir Starmer has just been publicly humiliated by King Charles III. What began as a quiet disagreement behind palace walls has now erupted into a constitutional crisis shaking the foundations of British democracy. The monarchy has drawn its line. The Prime Minister has crossed it. And now, Britain stands on the brink of chaos. Stay with me, because what you're about to hear could change how you see the balance of power in this country forever. It all began less than a day ago inside Buckingham Palace, during what was meant to be a routine meeting between the Crown and the Prime Minister. Witnesses say the atmosphere froze the moment Starmer walked in. King Charles, usually calm and composed, looked visibly cold. On the table in front of them sat a folder stamped "Confidential, Constitutional Conduct." According to insiders, that folder contained a transcript of Starmer's recent remarks, the same ones that caused outrage across the nation, where he declared that the monarchy serves Parliament, not the other way around. The king had read every word. But this time, he wasn't going to stay silent. Sources claim Charles looked Starmer straight in the eye and said, "You've forgotten that respect is what holds this nation together. Power without respect is not leadership, it's arrogance." Those in the room say the Prime Minister's face went pale. The silence that followed was suffocating. For the first time in modern history, a reigning monarch had directly rebuked a sitting Prime Minister. Within minutes, whispers of the confrontation began spreading through palace corridors. Starmer had not been challenged by the opposition or the press, but by the king himself. When he left the palace gates, reporters could already tell something monumental had happened. His car raced past cameras, his jaw clenched, eyes fixed forward. He refused to answer a single question. Then, just an hour later, a palace statement dropped like a thunderclap. His Majesty believes that all branches of government must act with respect toward the institutions that bind this nation together. No names. No direct reference. But everyone knew exactly who those words were meant for. Within minutes, headlines exploded. King Charles delivers silent blow to Starmer. Monarch breaks tradition, warns against political arrogance. Social media went into overdrive. Hashtags like #Crown vs Commons and #Starmer humiliated shot to the top of trending lists. Inside Parliament, chaos erupted. Some Labour MPs demanded Starmer issue a public apology to the king before it was too late. Others accused the palace of stepping out of line. The atmosphere was electric. Veteran MPs whispered that they hadn't seen anything like this in decades. One senior Labour figure reportedly told colleagues, "If the king moves against us, the people will follow him, not Starmer." And it's already happening. Polls taken just hours after the statement showed public support for the monarchy soaring to record highs. Meanwhile, Starmer's approval rating went into freefall. 67% of voters said he'd lost control, and nearly half believed he should resign immediately. Even members of his own cabinet began to distance themselves. When Chancellor Rachel Reeves was asked if she supported the Prime Minister's handling of the crisis, her reply was brief, no comment. Meanwhile, the king's calm silence was being praised as a brilliant strategy. Constitutional experts called it a masterclass in restraint. By saying almost nothing, the king had said everything. Every moment of silence from Buckingham Palace made Starmer appear smaller, angrier, and increasingly desperate. The monarch looked dignified, the Prime Minister looked defeated. One palace insider put it simply, the king didn't need to raise his voice. The country did that for him. The political earthquake was only beginning. Crowds were already gathering outside Parliament, waving Union Jacks and chanting, "Defend the Crown." Across the world, news anchors asked the same question: had Britain's Prime Minister just provoked the end of his own government? The humiliation was complete. But the fallout had only just begun. By dawn the next morning, Westminster no longer felt like a seat of power, it felt like a battlefield. The corridors buzzed with panic and disbelief. Then came word that King Charles had refused to grant the Prime Minister his regular weekly audience. One royal aide described it as an extraordinary move for extraordinary circumstances. To deny a sitting Prime Minister an audience sent a message that required no explanation: the king no longer trusted his government's leader. Within hours, the shockwaves hit every corner of politics. Labour's internal communication channels descended into chaos. Ministers demanded answers. Some urged reconciliation with the palace, others said Starmer had to stand his ground to prove Parliament's supremacy. But even amid those frantic discussions, one truth was clear: Starmer had lost control of his party, his message, and his authority. At 9 a.m., cameras caught him leaving Number 10, flanked by frantic aides. He was due to deliver a statement on constitutional clarity. But when he reached the podium, it was obvious something inside him had broken. His voice was tense and defensive as he declared, "In this country, the government answers to Parliament, not to inherited privilege. I will not be lectured on democracy by any institution, no matter how ancient." The words were barely out of his mouth before headlines erupted again. What was meant to show strength came off as defiance, and this time, the British public had had enough. Commentators across major networks agreed, Starmer had crossed a line no leader could survive. Sky News called it a self-inflicted implosion. The Guardian said it was the speech that may end his career. Even BBC anchors struggled to hide their shock. Social media erupted with memes of Starmer standing before a torn Union Jack. Hashtags like #RespectTheCrown and #StarmerOut dominated the feed. Even loyal Labour supporters began to turn on him. One viral post summed it up: he's not fighting for democracy. He's fighting his ego. Then came the leak that changed everything. Late that afternoon, internal Downing Street memos surfaced, revealing that Starmer's team had been planning to modernise royal protocol, reducing the king's role in several constitutional duties. The proposals, though still drafts, suggested curbing the monarch's influence in ministerial appointments and scaling back traditional briefings. On paper, it looked bureaucratic. To the public, it looked like a coup. Opposition leaders pounced. Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch called it the most dangerous attack on our monarchy in living memory. Nigel Farage went further, accusing Starmer of trying to silence the throne and rewrite Britain's very identity. By nightfall, thousands had gathered outside Buckingham Palace, waving flags beneath the cold November sky. The crowd grew by the hour: students, pensioners, families, all chanting, "Defend the Crown." Police struggled to contain the swelling masses. Across Manchester, Liverpool, and Glasgow, royalist rallies erupted spontaneously. Britain hadn't seen scenes like this since the Queen's coronation. It was no longer politics. It was emotional. It was an identity. Inside Number 10, panic turned to despair. Senior advisors begged Starmer to step back, to issue even a token apology, but he refused. One aide told reporters he was furious, pacing the room, insisting he wouldn't bow to theatrics. He thought he could outlast the outrage. What he didn't realize was that the outrage had already become rebellion. That night, Transport Secretary Louise Hay resigned live on air, declaring she could no longer serve a government that disrespects the crown. Within hours, 3 junior ministers followed her. By morning, 10 resignations had hit Starmer's desk. Labour's private chats buzzed with talk of an emergency leadership challenge. One name appeared again and again: Angela Rayner. Meanwhile, King Charles remained silent, calmly carrying out his royal duties as if nothing had happened. Meeting veterans, visiting charities, attending services. His composure only deepened Starmer's humiliation. Global newspapers ran the same headline: "The King who said nothing and won everything." World leaders took notice. Australia's Prime Minister praised Charles as a symbol of stability in turbulent times. Canada's press commended his restraint. Even the White House released a statement reaffirming its deep respect for the British Crown as a cornerstone of democratic tradition. For Starmer, it was a diplomatic disaster. Allies who once admired him now saw a man at war with his own nation's heritage. By the end of the week, the polls confirmed the inevitable: Labour's support had collapsed to historic lows, below 25%. The Conservatives gained modestly, but Reform UK surged on a wave of nationalist energy. Nigel Farage appeared on national TV, smiling faintly as he said, "This week, the Prime Minister tried to humble the monarchy. Instead, the monarchy humbled him." And through it all, one image came to define the crisis: King Charles standing outside a cathedral, hand raised in a quiet wave to cheering crowds, while inside number 10, Keir Starmer sat alone, blinds drawn, staring at the ruins of his own making. Britain was no longer simply in crisis. It was transforming. The line between Parliament and the Crown had been redrawn, and history had just chosen its side. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel for more in-depth political commentary, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next deep dive into the world of power and politics. Thanks for watching.